Pittsburgh Steelers, you're on the clock. Welcome back to our team mock draft series. This time we're looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll look at the team overview and then we'll get to it. We'll mock every single one of their picks in the 2025 NFL draft. Let's get to it. And as we do with all these mock drafts, we're going to set the tone a little bit. We're going to look at how this team currently stands. We're not going to project free agency because free agency is a bit of a crapshoot. It can go a lot of different directions. Obviously, I would love to hear your comments below. If you guys have players you want your Steelers to target free agency, feel free to let me know. I'd love to hear what you think. In terms of their cap situation, they're in a pretty good spot. They got plenty of money to spend. They are a team that has plenty of free agents, though, so they have some things they have to decide how they want to move forward. I do like to show you guys PFF grades for last season for their players. It's kind of as you expect. If you're a Steelers fan, you know that this is a strong defense. They've got plenty of guys that are ranked at or near the top half of the league in terms of their position. They got studs, but one big thing that we're going to have to take in consideration as we move over the next couple of drafts is they're going to have to replace a significant portion of their defensive line. You know, they're going to have to replace a stud Hall of Famer in Cam Hayward at some point. He's not going to last forever. He's still playing at a high level, so I project him to at least be here with another season, maybe two. Depending on how things go for Pittsburgh over the next few years. The offensive side of the ball, that's where things get a little bit more dicey. Obviously, we know the quarterback situation is something that needs to be addressed. Russell Wilson wasn't cooking at the end of the season. Do they move on from him? Certainly sounds like it. Justin Fields, I would love to see this team give him a chance. Obviously, he played some of his best ball of his career with Pittsburgh last season. So do they think they can get more and take him to the next level? Maybe they do. We obviously need a wide receiver to pair with George Pickens. You know, I don't think they have that true number one or number 1A and 1B, depending on how you view George Pickens. They have their tight end situation figured out. They need some offensive line help. You know, there's a few directions we could go. When you look at their free agents, you know, they've got quite a bit of money coming off the books here, you know, in terms of the different free agents, but they have to decide what they want to do. They've got some younger guys, especially in the secondary. Do they keep some of these corners, you know, the CJ Hendersons, even Dante Jackson, who's getting closer to 30, that will determine which direction they need to go in free agency or the draft. I mean, so there's definitely quite a bit of things going on here. Running back is huge. Does Najee Harris hit the market? This guy's continued to produce. He's continued to hit 1,000 yards a season, even though he's had it up and down in terms of what people's perspective of him is. I think they'd be smart to try to hold on to him for a reasonable price if he's willing to, because he fits what they like to do. They need that big physical type of running back to really set the tone for their offense. Been like that for ages now, and it's not going to change today. There is quite a bit in terms of secondary and defensive help that's probably going to need to come in the form of either re-signing some of these guys. You know, as you look through this list, we've got 3-4 corners that are free agents or potential free agents. Then when you look at the depth chart, you know, a lot of those guys that we talked about in the secondary are free agents. Dante Jackson, Cam Sutton, CJ Henderson, you know, guys who are in the top half of their depth chart. So we have to, that will weigh into our considerations as what we try to do moving forward. I think they could use some offensive line help, probably more in terms of depth that could push for startable reps. I would love to see them do something with their tackles. I like Broderick Jones, but I think Dan Moore could use some competition. I definitely think they need at least 1 to 2 receivers. You know, they could use 1 to 2 running backs depending on what happens. So when I look at my top needs, I kind of give you my top 5 in this situation. I think they need edge help. They need to replace both Ogunjobi and then Hayward over the next couple of years. I think I called it a true wide receiver 1 because I think Pickens is more of a really high-end wide receiver 2. And then potentially 2 wide receivers in this class. I know we have about 8 picks to work with as it stands today. I think they need some defensive depth. I think it's pretty thin after you get past your starters. Then O-line depth, you know, either on the interior or on the outside. I would love to see them bring in a guy who's maybe kind of more projects as a left tackle that could be developmental as we move forward. And then I think quarterback situation, I would love to see us get a mid to late round quarterback. All right, on the board at pick 21 here, I think we can go whichever direction we want to go. If your top need is wide receiver, you've got Emeka Egbuka sitting there. I think he's an awesome route runner. I think he could really step in and be a high-end contributor from day one and take some pressure off Pickens. Do you want to go defensive line, offensive line? I mean, the board is sitting here perfect for us. I am going to go with what is their top player on the board? I'm going Walter Nolan. He's got perfect size, perfect speed. He's got the burst. He can set the tone for that defensive line. He can step in from day one and be a starter for you. But in the end, the biggest key factor that I would lean towards Nolan is just because he's the most scheme versatile of those players that were sitting there. I think, all right, back on the clock at pick 53, we can go a couple different directions. We've already addressed a defensive lineman. If you really wanted to grab another edge rusher, we've got those options there. I think I want to look at running backs just because as I look through what's here on the board, there's a ton of running back options. And I think even though the top couple are off the board, we could get one that I think is an elite high-end prospect that could step in and play meaningful reps from day one. And that's Travion Henderson from Ohio State. When you think about those Pittsburgh Steelers teams of old, you had your physical pounder, and then you had your really smooth, big play threat. And that's what Henderson can be. He's got very good acceleration. This guy can take the ball to the house from anywhere on the field. I think even if that allows you to then still bring back Najee, and then you have both those, the thunder and lightning type combination that a lot of teams are starting to see, you're starting to see them deploy. Or he could be your number one, right? Like he's got the ability to kind of be the number one guy, or he can be a nice complement to your big physical guy. So I like him, and I don't think he falls past round 2, so I would want to grab him here. All right, back on the clock at pick 85. We have a few different directions we can go. I think this is the point in the draft where I'm going to look at DB just because we're not sure how many they will bring back in free agency, because they have quite a few that are free agents. And there are quite a few that are available right now that are still guys that I think can step in and play startable reps from day one. Thomas from Florida State, I think, is going to be one that we're going to look at here because he's got kind of that Steelers mold. He's got big, physical, he's athletic, he's kind of a ball hawk. I think he's the guy that I would lean at when you look at this list of kind of who's available in the range that they may look at. Hairston is a very talented one as well. I think you could argue that him, Kobe Bryant, or Thomas could be in play if you're looking at this position at this spot here. But I'm going with Thomas just because he does give me the Steeler vibe in terms of he's got the size, he's got speed, he's ball hawk. They're always looking for guys that are going to be trying to make those big plays and take the ball away. So he's a perfect fit for what they're looking for at that point. All right, back on the clock, pick 121. We can go a few different directions, but I'm really surprised to see Jackson Dart still sitting on the board. So it would be hard pressed for me to see a team like Pittsburgh not target him, even though I know he wasn't on my short list of players I was looking at, because honestly, I didn't expect him to be available at this point in the draft. We're sitting in the 4th round. I figured he was probably a day 2 pick at some point. He's really going to continue to fly up draft boards, but he's here, so we're going to take him. He's got mobility. He can make all the passes that you need him to make at all the different levels, and he does what they want. They have competition now in their quarterback room. So even if you bring back Justin Fields, you've got another young guy, and you can let them fight it out and see who gets it. In the end, I think that would be a great pick for them. I think he has the ability and potential and a ton of experience at college level that he could come to the NFL and just be ready to roll. Back on the clock at pick 162, and we're going to grab ourselves a wide receiver here. I really like Ole Miss's Antoine Wells. I think he's a really good route runner. He's a very reliable pass catcher. He's a yak guy, and he doesn't have to be the big physical guy because you've got Pickens, but he is, for his size, very physical and very strong. I think he has good ball tracking skills. I think he can be used in a variety of positions, whether you want to do some trick plays and do some things like that. I think he gives you that ability. So pick at this point in the draft, later in the, the 5th, 6th, 7th round, I think makes sense for a guy like that because he can continue to learn and grow and develop, but he's a guy that you could see get some meaningful reps sooner rather than later. All right, back on the clock at pick 224, and we're going to grab ourselves some linebacker depth that can push for playing time. We've got a guy from Georgia here that is an athletic marvel. This guy is big, he's fast, he's physical, got a good football IQ, he's played at a big time program. I think all of these things add up to a player that really could be intriguing for Pittsburgh, and especially if he really is available this late in the draft, could be a huge steal for them. Back on the clock at pick 230, we're going to grab our developmental swing tackle here. A guy that I really think is kind of flying under the radar and not being talked enough about is Holland Pierce from Rutgers. This guy is big, physical, but I think he's got a lot of developmental upside. I think you could develop him as a tackle, or you could play him on the inside. And I think that can be that versatility, I think, can be really intriguing, especially this late in the draft. Depending on how their offensive line shakes out, a guy like this could be huge for them. Now, back on the clock at 246, we're actually going to double dip. That's not necessarily something I do in these mock drafts because I like to talk about some different players, but a guy sitting on the board here is a DB from Nebraska and Tommy Hill, and he's a guy that really feels like a Steelers type guy for me. Not necessarily as big. He's only 6 foot as Thomas was, 6'2", but he's got good speed. He's really good in pass defense. He's one of the leaders in the Big Ten for passes defended last year. He's a guy that just knows how to get his hand on the ball and really get things taken away. So I think he fits what Pittsburgh needs to do and likes to do in that defense. They like to let their corners kind of go and attack. And I think depending on how Pittsburgh goes in terms of what they or who they bring back, I think Hill could be a really fun later round prospect to add to that room. Obviously, you see here, PFF loved it, didn't love it. What did you guys think? Tell me in the comments below. I love to have the conversations with you guys. I love to hear from you, and we'll talk to you again soon.